Cheers. Welcome back. Right, so another very common question I got asked is, how do I paint aluminium parts? Aluminium or aluminum, depending on where in the world you are from, is the same metal and it does have I in it, so I believe it's aluminium. But anyway, this is how I do it. Painting aluminium parts on your motorcycle or aluminium panels on your luggage side panels or just panels as such, it doesn't really matter. It's all the same process, and again 90% of it is in preparation, and you prepare it just like any other job. You clean it, you derust it, deoxidize it and degrease it and sand it a bit to promote the paint adhesion. I've got a front master brake cylinder from my Supermoto DRZ 400, and it's all aluminium part. I've got it attached up to the brake hose. I'm not gonna deattach it, I'm not gonna bleed the brake, and I just want to say there are a few different levels you want to have it done. This is a Supermoto bike, this is another show bike. I just wanted to look it a little bit more presentable, and as you can see, it's a common main offender. The paint peels off from that part because the brake fluid at some point was leaking. So I wanted to make it look a bit more presentable. If you were doing it on a brand new Ducati or a showroom kind of chopper custom bike, you would take it apart, you would take this apart, you would take this off, and you would take this completely apart. But then again, the preparation is exactly same way. But there are different levels of doing it. I would say out of 10 I'm doing it to standard number 6. If I was doing it for a showroom bike, I would do standard number 10. It's at different levels how you want to do it, but the process is more or less the same. So first thing you want to do, as with any kind of preparation of paint job, you want to degrease it. I've got my degreasing wipes over here. Make sure there's no grease from the lever over here, no grease from the road, no grease from your hands, and no any kind of bullshit that can interfere with your paint. I'm gonna take a few minutes over here to degrease it completely all the way around before I do anything else with it. Now it's been fully degreased, completely free of any kind of residue. Now it's the time to put your sandpaper to it. Sandpaper, or in this particular case I'm going to use again my favorite red Scotch pad. The reason I'm using red Scotch pad over here, it's got irregular surfaces, all those grooves, irregularities, porous surfaces. It is much easier for me to work with a Scotch pad because it kind of adopts to a shape. If I was more of a flat kind of panel, I would use sandpaper. I would use more coarse, let's say 60, 120, and then gradually going down to 400, 600, depending on your surface, what you're painting. And why degreasing is important before you put sandpaper to it? Well, it's very simple. If you have any grease on the surface and you start rubbing it down with your sandpaper or your Scotch pad, there's a very good chance you're going to rub that grease into those microscopic porous surface you're going to create with your sandpaper. You're going to rub that grease into the grooves of your unit, of your panel you want to paint, and it's going to be very difficult later on to remove that grease from the tiny little grooves. So always degrease it first, you know, degreaser, brake cleaner, whatever you've got, and then sand it and then degrease it again. Simple as that. Now I'm happy with this so far. It's been completely rubbed down. Pure aluminium part, and you got some paint over here already, and chances are this is factory paint, and most likely it is. It's a very good quality paint. If it's not coming off, don't worry about it. You don't need to get it off completely. If it's not coming off, don't need to rub it down to the bar aluminium. It only makes your job easier. In this case, that's already primed underneath, and its paint is very solid. I need to prime the bar aluminium part. In the whole process I'm going to prime the whole thing just to make it even. But if it doesn't come off, don't worry about it. Leave it where it is. It only makes your life easier. Again, if you're doing a showroom bike, if you're doing level 10 over here, you probably want to use some paint stripper on this or go crazy, but for what I'm doing for my supermoto, when it's gonna get dropped, it's gonna get scratched, it's gonna get beaten up, I'm happy with it. This is good. At this stage, again, I'm gonna completely degrease the whole thing. Completely give it a good spray of my degreaser, brake cleaner, whatever you've got over there. Alcohol, panel wipe, whatever takes all the shit out of it, you know, all the grease, all the dust, and prepare the surface for paint. Once the degreaser is completely evaporated, I'm using high performance panel prep, it pretty much evaporates instantly. Once it's all dry, it's ready to be masked. I'm gonna mask off all the parts I don't want to paint to get in, which is the optic over here, and starting from the hose, all the rubber parts around here when I don't want paint to get into. Now I hear what you're saying, until that part, because it's all masked off and ready for paint, ready for prime. It's all the same process as painting any other part, any other metal part, and yes, you are absolutely right. What's different is what's coming now. What I use differently is edge primer. It doesn't matter what brand it is, they're all the fucking same. Edge primer, from my understanding, it's got some kind of acidic contents to it that eats into a surface. That's why it's used for bare metal, galvanized surfaces, and I use it for aluminium. Whether it's the right way, whether it's the wrong way, well, I don't fucking know. It's my way. I've been doing like this for quite some time, quite a few years, and I never had a problem. Always following the same step, same process, and I never had a problem painting aluminium. Paint stays there, paint doesn't crack, it doesn't chip easily. Now, even though there is a lot of surface on here already that is painted, and I only need to worry about the bare aluminium part over here, I'm gonna give a really thin coat across the whole surface of that part. Again, thin coat of a edge primer, and I'm gonna leave it for 24 hours, at least 24 hours, to do its bit. Once again, guys, very thin couple of coats of edge primer all over that aluminium part, painted and not painted. I'm leaving it for 24 hours now to do its bit, revisit it tomorrow. Here we are, pretty much exactly 24 hours later, and the primer is looking pretty good. It's nice, dry and solid. The edge primer did its thing. Now we can attack it with a paint of our choice. At this stage, it doesn't really matter what kind of paint we using, because we're not painting aluminium directly, we're painting the primer, which is coating the aluminium itself. So obviously it does make a difference what paint you're using, as in what application that is, whether that's outside, inside, whether that's needs to be, well, heat resistant is a different story because primer isn't, but all those factors comes to the choice of your paint. I'm gonna attack it with just wheel paint silver, just because I've got a wheel paint silver that was silver originally. I wanted it to remain silver, and it just makes sense, you know, to use that same color. But other than that, it doesn't really matter. Don't need to be aluminium specific paint, because we're not painting aluminium itself, we're painting the primer that's coating the aluminium. This is very light coat number 1. I'm gonna give it another coat, maybe coat 3, maybe 3 coats, depending what the coverage is like, but it's looking pretty good so far. There we go, guys, 2 light coats and 1 heavy coat, and the item is near enough good as new. Obviously we've got a danger of brake fluid leaking from that container, and that's exactly what happened previously. That's why the paint disappeared from that aluminium part, but when looking after it properly, hopefully this will stay like this for years to come. Simple as that, guys. Again, hope it helps with any kind of project you're doing. You got any questions, drop me a comment below. If you got any suggestions to what I just did, please do drop me a comment below. Hopefully I can learn something new from you guys. Other than that, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Rock hard, have a beer, and I'll see you very soon.